The following summer, 2003, we sampled Dungeness crab. One of the most popular items on Washington seafood menus, Dungeness crab is harvested from the Aleutian Islands in Alaska to Mexico. The shell is purple-tinged, grayish-brown on the back with white-tipped claws. Dungeness crab can reach 10 inches across the back, with 6 to 7 inches being more common. The crab is most abundant in Puget Sound north of Seattle, in Hood Canal and along the coast. Dungeness crab is frequently associated with eelgrass beds and prefers sandy or muddy substrates. We purchased new stainless steel crab pots for the sampling. We decontaminated them by sitting them on wooden pallets covered in 4mm plastic, spraying them down with a pressure washer, then soaping them, then spraying them with a pressure washer again, and finally pouring buckets of deionized water over the pots. Next, the clean pots were transported to the boat via the gator. Pots were wrapped in clean, new plastic during transportation to avoid contamination from vehicle exhaust, local sediments, and other possibilities. Once on the boat, we covered the pots with new plastic to avoid introduction of chemicals from boat fumes and other sources. We required a minimum of 8 legal-sized crabs from each pot in order to obtain enough sample material to conduct all of the analyses. Following state harvesting regulations, only male crabs with carapace widths greater than 15.88 centimeters, the legal limit, were taken. Sampling station coordinates were recorded using a handheld global positioning system. The pots were baited with frozen squid bait that was purchased, then the pots were thrown overboard and set overnight. The following day, the pots were pulled and the crab collected. Prepping the crabs for transport to the lab proved more difficult than initially expected. Of utmost importance was keeping the crab's carapace intact, the large outer shell that protects the back of the crab, because the major organ, the hepatopancreas, rests just under this shell. This is important because some toxics accumulate more in the organs and fatty tissues rather than the lean muscles of species. However, in order to kill the crab but keep the carapace intact, thus not breaking the hepatopancreas, a dull but heavy blow to the ventral underside of the crab was required, breaking the ventral nerve cord. Easier said than done. Once they stopped fighting, we wrapped them in new aluminum foil, dull side in, and bagged them in labeled bags, shipped them that same day to the Axis lab with frozen pop bottles in the coolers to keep the crabs cool. All the while, of course, following strict chain of custody procedures. All samples arrived satisfactorily to the lab. We used 2 labs for analysis: the Axis Analytical Lab located just outside of Victoria, British Columbia in Canada, and the Washington State Department of Ecology's Manchester Lab in Port Orchard, Washington. Both labs are highly respected EPA-certified laboratories. For both the tissue and sediment samples, the Manchester Lab performed all analysis except for the dioxin furan and the PCB congener analyses, which the Axis Lab performed due to their ability to obtain some of the lowest defensible detection limits in the region. This is important because the lower the detection limit, the smaller the concentration of the contaminant that can be detected. Since some chemicals, such as PCBs and dioxin furans, hazardous even in minute amounts, it is imperative to be able to detect these chemicals at very low levels. Both labs followed EPA-approved analytical procedures and have extensive QA/QC protocols in place. Sediment samples were shipped to each lab depending on which analyses each lab was running. All tissue samples were shipped directly to Axis for resection and homogenization. The butter clams and the native little neck clams were homogenized separately, and each homogenized sample originated from only one clam sample site location, for a total of 32 samples, 16 of each species. For the crabs, Axis resected and homogenized the hepatopancreas organ separately from the muscle tissue. Axis then performed the PCB congener and the dioxin furan analysis and shipped much of the prepared tissue to Manchester for the heavy metal, PCB aerochlor, chlorinated pesticide, organotin, and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon analyses. Throughout this project, outreach and education has been extremely important. Examples of such activities include articles published in Keokes, the monthly tribal newsletter, describing project activities and updates, giving tips in the monthly article called Healthy Home, with ways to reduce toxics in and around the home, and articles in the local and regional newspapers about the project and the tribe. In the first winter of the project, after samples were submitted, we had a bit of time to sit back, breathe, hold advisory board meetings, and look at next phases of the project. We found this self-evaluation extremely productive as important aspects, new dimensions, and reaffirmations came up each winter. Both the technical and tribal advisory boards played important roles in the project, providing guidance, feedback, and dissemination of results. Members of both boards travel to meetings once or sometimes even twice a year out of the goodness of their hearts, and we are thankful to have their encouragement, constructive criticism, and support throughout the project. Another factor in the education and outreach component of the project was initiated in the fall of 2003, the Swinomish Environmental Education Program, with the hire of the environmental educator. The mission of the Swinomish Environmental Education Program is to employ Native values to inform local communities about the importance of natural resource quality in the Lakaner and Swinomish Indian tribal community area. The pivotal facet of this program is that it is based on the concepts of local ecological and indigenous knowledge, the same concepts held by the intended tribal audience. The Swinomish Environmental Program has several facets, including education and outreach in the Swinomish and local surrounding community via presentations, newsletters, and videos. Since children are excellent educators of their parents, much of the effort was focused on interactive presentations in the local schools and community. An example of an educational tool used in our program is called Talks in a Box. It's an educational toolkit and corresponding program developed at the University of Washington. The Talks in a Box program provides school-age children information about chemicals and environmental health, and how to apply that knowledge to everyday life individually and in the community. Another such example is called Enviroscapes, a hands-on modeling tool of a watershed with a community, and it shows how pollution enters the watershed, spreads, and affects the local ecosystem in the community. Ms. Smith gives presentations for both adults and children in numerous venues, including local classrooms, both on and off reservation, community groups such as the Lakaner Boys and Girls Club and the Skagit County Children's Museum, the Swinomish Health Fair, and the Anacortes Marine Ecology Days, just to name a few. She has also led field trips to the reservation wetlands and in coordination with the Science Afloat program, which took a group of Swinomish youth into the Puget Sound on a biological research vessel. The classroom presentation evaluation forms received from both students and teachers praised Ms. Smith's presentations. The project has also focused on video media for outreach and education purposes. Television constitutes one of the most widely used forms of news acquisition and entertainment by tribal members. Television is a high priority among tribal members, with cable access often purchased over more basic items. With this in mind, one of the chosen avenues for outreach in the Swinomish community is through television programming on the Swinomish cable channel, Swin 96. Through this project, the cable channel has been able to air a variety of pieces, including project updates, videos, and news clips. Much of the focus of the video-related outreach and education activities have been enacted in coordination with the Native Lens program, which is run by the nonprofit organization Longhouse Media. The mission of Longhouse Media is to catalyze Indigenous people and communities to use media as a tool for self-expression, cultural preservation, and social change. Native Lens is a program of Longhouse Media supporting the growth and expression of Indigenous youth through digital filmmaking. The partnership started in 2004 when approximately 40 Swinomish youth participated in a weekend workshop called the Native Lens Youth Summit. With an introductory 2-day intensive course in media literacy and digital filmmaking with Native guest artists and filmmakers. The youth were excited and many expressed interest in continuing the work. The Native Lens Film Institute was launched, an advanced 6-month intensive filmmaking program offered on-site at the reservation with additional retreats in Seattle. 12 dedicated young people were guided through a rigorous instruction into the world of digital media, art taught by working professionals supported by Longhouse Media staff and tribal volunteers. The program challenges youth to think critically about media content and uses the collaborative process of digital filmmaking to teach leadership, teamwork, and artistic inquiry. Pieces were then screened at the Intertribal Full Circle Gathering, a 3-day Intertribal Youth Media Summit held in May 2005 that offered additional media arts and technology training to Native youth statewide, while providing the opportunity to collaborate, network, and showcase new work by youth producers, adult Native filmmakers, and media artists. After completion of the Native Lens workshop, a group of Swinomish youth were then given an assignment of filming a piece related to the local environment. From there, Slow Burn was created, starting 3 Swinomish youth, Cody Caillou, Nick Clark, and Travis Tom. Slow Burn is the story told from the perspective of these youth of what it is like to grow up on the reservation in the shadow of 2 large petrochemical facilities. The film premiered to a packed audience in February 2006 at the local Lincoln Theater. Emceed by famous actress and Native Lens youth mentor Elaine Miles, the premiere received rave reviews by both Swinomish and local community members who were in attendance. Yet another